She was 3 feet away from the most dangerous man in Brooklyn, and she was telling him they were out of his wine. Not whispering it, not apologizing for it, just stating it flat and unbothered, like she was reading a grocery list. Her order pad in one hand, her pen hovering, her dark eyes steady on his face while the rest of the restaurant held its breath and prayed she would not say anything else. Every server at Valenti's Waterfront had a name for Table 7. They called it the altar, not because anything sacred happened there, because every single person who walked toward it looked like they were walking to confession. Roman Cross sat at Table 7 every Tuesday night at exactly 8 o'clock. He had done it for 3 years without missing a single week. He came alone, meaning he came with 2 men who looked like they could flip a car with their bare hands, but he never brought company that talked. He sat in the curved lever booth with a view of the entire room, ordered the same meal, drank the same wine, and left before 9. He did not look at the staff. He did not smile. He tipped in cash, always $300, always folded in half and left beneath the edge of his water glass, and no one, not once in 3 years, had ever told him no, until tonight. Before we go any further, if you are new to this channel, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications. Drop a comment below and tell me, if you were working that restaurant, would you have walked toward that table? Because what Deja Banks did next will shake you. Stay with me. Deja Banks was 28 years old, and she was tired in a way that sleep could not fix. She had been on her feet since 10 that morning. A catering shift across town followed immediately by the dinner rush at Valenti's. Her feet ached inside her black shoes. Her left shoulder had been throbbing since she had hauled a full tray of water glasses up 2 flights of stairs at the catering job. She had reapplied concealer twice today, trying to cover the shadows beneath her eyes that had taken up permanent residence sometime around the 3rd week of February, when Marcus's treatment center had called and used words like outstanding balance and payment arrangement and 30-day notice in the same polite clinical sentence. She was not thinking about Roman Cross when Gino found her in the service corridor at 7:52. Gino Ferretti was the floor manager at Valenti's, and he was a man who sweated even in winter. His collar was already damp. He was holding a folded napkin and pressing it to his forehead the way a man presses a cloth to a wound. Deja, his voice was low and urgent. Table 7, I need you on it. It is not my rotation, Gino. Derek called out. Derek called out last Tuesday too, and the Tuesday before that. He is not feeling well. He is not feeling brave, she said. There is a difference. Gino took a step closer. Deja, please. I will give you Derek's full service charge. I will cover your Sunday so you can get up to Westchester. I will personally apologize to you every single day for a week. She looked past him toward the main dining room. She could see the alcove from here. The semicircular booth already set with the precision of a surgeon's tray, 2 crystal glasses, a single white rose in a narrow vase. The water glasses turned upside down, waiting, everything in its place, everything correct. Because the man who sat there noticed when things were not correct, and the consequences of him noticing were the kind that followed you home. She thought about the phone call from Sunrise Recovery. She thought about Marcus asleep in his narrow bed at the facility, his face finally starting to fill back out after 3 years of being hollowed. She thought about the number she had run in her head on the bus that morning, the gap between what she had and what she owed, and how no amount of rearranging it made it close. Fine, she said, but I swear to God, Gino, if he does not like the pasta, it is not the pasta he has ever had a problem with. What does he have a problem with? Gino's eyes shifted sideways. Just be respectful. Be efficient. Do not make eye contact unless he makes it first. And whatever you do, do not run out of his wine. She picked up the water pitcher. Got it. What Gino did not know, what no one at Valenti's knew yet, was that the kitchen had sold the last 2 bottles of Roman Cross's preferred wine an hour earlier to a table of Wall Street lawyers celebrating something loud and expensive. The sommelier had flagged it to the head chef. The head chef had decided this was a problem that belonged to whoever was serving table 7. And the person who was serving table 7 was currently walking across the marble floor with a water pitcher and absolutely no plan. The front doors opened at exactly 8 o'clock. The room changed before anyone saw him. It was a physical thing, the change, like the pressure drop before a storm. Conversations did not stop dramatically. They just thinned out, one by one, people's attention shifting toward the entrance without meaning to. The way your eyes move toward a flame even when you are trying not to look. 2 men came in first, wide, quiet, deliberate. Their eyes swept the room in the unhurried way of people who are not looking for a table. They were looking for threats. They found none, or at least none that concerned them. Then Roman Cross walked in. He was not what you expected. That was the thing everyone said about him who had ever actually been in a room with him. You expected someone who announced himself, someone who needed to. But Roman Cross at 34 years old was lean and angular, with dark hair swept back from a sharp face, a jaw cut like it had been decided on rather than grown, and eyes the color of cold creek water in October. He wore a brown tailored blazer over a white shirt left open at the collar, black trousers, a watch that caught the light once and did not bother to again. There was a small tattoo at the side of his neck, just above the collar line, something geometric. Something that looked like it had been put there young, before he had started thinking about what statements he wanted his body to make. He moved through the room the way water moves through a space, without urgency, without acknowledgement, as if the restaurant existed as a backdrop and the people in it were furniture. He reached table 7 and sat down. He unfolded his napkin. He did not look up. Deja approached. In the kitchen, Gino was watching through the pass-through window. His knuckles were white on the counter's edge. She stepped up to the table and set down the glass with a clean, quiet click. "Good evening." Sparkling or still, the room, at least the part of it closest to the alcove, went very quiet. Roman Cross's hand stopped moving on the napkin. A half-second pause so brief that most people would not have noticed it, but it was there. Because the voice that had just spoken to him was not trembling. It was not overly cheerful in the way of someone performing confidence they did not feel. It was simply tired and professional and utterly unimpressed. He raised his head. He looked at her the way he looked at things that did not compute, with a slow, complete attention that felt less like a gaze and more like an assessment. He saw the frayed edge of her collar, where it had been pressed one too many times. He saw the faint shadows under her eyes that the light caught at a certain angle. He saw the small scar on her chin, old, white, healed long ago. He saw the set of her jaw, which was the jaw of someone who had already made peace with the fact that this night was going to be difficult and had decided to get through it anyway. She was not afraid of him, not because she did not know who he was. She knew exactly who he was. Everyone in that neighborhood knew. The Cross family had run the waterfront unions and the construction contracts and the back channel money for 30 years. Roman had inherited all of it at 26 when his father had a stroke and never fully recovered, and in 8 years he had built it into something larger and more complicated than his father had ever imagined. She was not afraid of him because she was already at the bottom, and you cannot threaten someone with a fall when they are already on the ground. "Still," he said. "No ice," she wrote it down. Then she said, "We are out of your usual sparkling. I can bring you an alternative, or I can check the cellar, but the cellar is 3 flights down and I would put it at 10 minutes. In the kitchen, Gino made a sound that was not quite a word. The silence at the table stretched. Roman Cross regarded her with an expression that was completely unreadable. One of his guards at the bar had taken a single step forward, sensing something in the air that required attention. Then, and this was the thing that the other servers would talk about for weeks afterward, the corner of Roman Cross's mouth moved. not a smile exactly. Something older and quieter than a smile, something that looked like recognition. "The alternative is fine," he said. She nodded once and walked away without bowing, without thanking him for his gracious understanding, without any of the elaborate deference that Table 7 usually produced. She simply turned and went to get the water. She did not know, in that moment, that this was the first crack in a wall he had been building for 2 years. She did not know that the wall had a name, and that the name was Anna, and that she would not learn that name for another 3 weeks. She was thinking about whether the alternative sparkling was cold enough, and whether she had time to check on the food runner before the appetizers went up. She brought his water. She brought his bread. She stood at the edge of the table with her order pad, and she looked at him and waited, and he studied her for just a beat longer than necessary before he ordered. "The short rib," he said. "Tell the kitchen the sauce was thin last week. I will tell them. And the wine," she flipped a page on her pad. "The Barolo you usually order. We are sold out. We have the Barbara or the Brunello. The Brunello is better, but it is $40 more." He looked at her. "You have an opinion on my wine?" "I have an opinion on the wine," she said. "You can take it or leave it." Another pause, longer this time. His guards had both stilled. The bartender had stopped polishing glasses. "Bring the Brunello," Roman Cross said, and Deja Banks wrote it down and went to put in the order, and the restaurant around them exhaled. For the next 40 minutes, she served him with the same flat efficiency she brought to every table. No performance, no theater, just competence. She refilled his glass when it needed it. She cleared the bread basket without being asked. When a busboy nearly clipped the corner of the booth with a tray cart, she intercepted it without breaking her stride, redirecting it smoothly, and the moment passed without incident. Roman Cross noticed all of it. She did not know that either. He had eaten at this restaurant for 3 years. He had been served by 14 different people. They all had 2 things in common. They were terrified, and they tried to hide it with either excessive helpfulness or a kind of robotic, practiced neutrality. This woman was neither. She was simply present, doing her job the way a person does a job they are good at and need badly and are not going to make a production of. He was halfway through his main course when he said, without looking up from his plate, "You have been here before. I do not recognize you, but you move like you know this room." 8 months, she said, refilling his water. "You just never looked up before." He did look up then, and for a moment there was something in his face, not softness exactly, but a crack in the surface through which something honest moved briefly and then retreated. "No," he said, "I suppose I did not." She nodded and stepped back, and that was when the front door crashed open and the night became something else entirely. It was not the sound of the door. It was the sound of everything after it. The screaming, the scrape of chairs against marble, the shattering of a decorative glass panel near the entrance as 3 men in dark jackets came through the space where a door had been. They moved fast and they moved deliberately, and the weapons in their hands were not the kind of thing you argued with. The Sokov brothers. Dmitri in front, his younger brother Vale, and a third man flanking him. The Sokov Bratva had been circling Roman Cross's territory for 8 months, testing borders, cutting corners, sending messages through people who could not send messages back. Tonight was not a message. Tonight was a closing statement. The restaurant dissolved. People dove. Tables went over. A woman near the window was screaming and could not stop. The music system cut out with a crackling pop. Roman's 2 gods were already moving, reaching, but Dmitri Sokov had the angle and he knew it, and his weapon swung toward table 7 with the calm precision of a man who had rehearsed this. Roman Cross did not move. He sat in his booth with his fork in his hand and his face completely still, and he looked at Dmitri Sokov the way you look at a problem you have been expecting. And Deja Banks, who was standing 3 feet away holding an empty bread basket, did something that no risk calculation would have recommended and no amount of courage training could have manufactured, because it did not come from courage. She dropped the bread basket and she shoved Roman Cross sideways with both hands. Hard. The glass behind him exploded. The sound of it was enormous, a percussive crack that compressed the air in the room. And then Roman Cross was sideways in the booth, and the bullet that had been aimed at the back of his head was buried in the mahogany paneling where his skull had been 1 second earlier, and everything that came after happened very fast. Roman's guards opened fire. Dimitri's third man went down immediately. Vale grabbed a restaurant patron as cover, a terrible decision that he had about 4 seconds to regret. Roman came up out of the booth with a gun in his hand that had appeared from somewhere, and he fired twice over the top of the booth, controlled and precise, and the sound of each shot was like a period at the end of a sentence. Then, silence. Not the silence before the storm, the silence after it, the kind that rings. Deja was on the floor of the booth. She was pressed against the leather seat with her hands over her ears and her eyes shut, and she was shaking, not the shaking of fear exactly, but the full-body shaking of adrenaline that has nowhere left to go. She could smell gun smoke and spilled wine and the leather of the seat, and somewhere in the room a child was crying with the exhausted, rhythmic crying of someone who has been terrified past the point of loudness. A hand touched her chin. She flinched hard. Easy. The voice was low, close. She opened her eyes. Roman Cross was crouched in front of her. His blazer had glass in the lapel. There was a small cut on his forearm from a ricocheted fragment. His gun was holstered. He was looking at her face with an expression she had not seen on him before and could not immediately name, something between shock and a careful, analytical attention that was trying to understand what it was looking at. There was blood on her cheek. She had not felt it. A shard of glass, half an inch long, had caught her when the window blew. He pulled a handkerchief from his breast pocket, white silk, monogrammed, and pressed it gently against her cheek. His fingers were warm. They were the careful fingers of someone being deliberately, consciously gentle. "You pushed me," he said. It was not an accusation. It was a man trying to make sense of data that did not fit his existing model of the world. "You were just sitting there," she said. "People run," he said. "When something like that happens, people run. I did not have time to run. You had time. You chose not to use it." She did not have an answer for that. She took the handkerchief from him and held it to her cheek herself. Outside, sirens were starting, distant but closing. Roman Cross stood. He looked around the room with the methodical attention of a man taking inventory. His guards were standing. The Sokov men were not. He reached into the inside pocket of his blazer and withdrew a thick, cream-colored envelope and set it on the table beside the ruined remains of his dinner. Then he looked at Gino Ferretti, who had emerged from behind the kitchen pass-through and was standing in the doorway with the expression of a man who has just watched his entire future rearrange itself. "Gino." "Yes, Mr. Cross." "Yes, sir." "Let her go." Deja was on her feet. She heard the words, and for a moment they did not connect. The syntax was right, but the meaning seemed to belong to a different sentence. "I am sorry. You are done here." He said it without looking at her. He was already calculating. "Gino, if she is on the floor when I come back, I close this restaurant." Her voice was sharp. She was surprised by the sharpness of it. "I just saved your life. I know you did." He turned then and looked at her directly. "And if you come back here, the people who just tried to take mine will come looking for yours. You were seen. You pushed me. They will want to know who you are and what you know, and they will not ask politely." He paused. "This is not a punishment. Pick up the envelope." She stood in the wreckage of the dining room with the silk handkerchief pressed to her face and sirens wailing outside, and the sound of her own heartbeat very loud in her ears. And she looked at the envelope on the table. She picked it up. She intended to throw it at his back, but it was heavy, and she opened it. And there was more money than she had ever held in her life, banded in stacks of clean hundreds, and beneath the top stack a small card. Cream. Handwritten in clean dark letters, with a phone number and a single word: tomorrow. Deja did not go home that night. She took the train north, transferring twice in the kind of late-night quiet that makes subway cars feel like confessionals, and she arrived at Sunrise Recovery in Westchester at 1:20 in the morning, and she walked through the lemon-scented corridor to the nurse's station, and she put the envelope on the counter. "This covers the outstanding balance," she said, "and 3 months forward. I need a receipt." She sat with Marcus for an hour after that. He was asleep. He had been asleep a lot lately, which the doctors said was the body healing, the nervous system rewiring itself around the absence of the thing it had been built to crave. He looked younger when he was asleep. He looked like the boy she had grown up watching, the one who used to follow her around the apartment in Baltimore when he was 6 and she was 12, asking her questions about everything he saw. She used to get annoyed at the questions. She would give a great deal now to hear them again. She held his hand. She looked at the phone number on the card. It was already tomorrow. She dialed. 1 ring. Then a male voice, low and alert, the voice of someone who does not sleep deeply. "Miss Banks, not a question. There is a car 4 minutes out. Please wait at the main entrance." She had not told them where she was. She sat with that for a moment. Then she kissed Marcus on the forehead, tucked the blanket more tightly around his shoulder, and walked out into the dark. "Now, if this story is already gripping you, and I know it is, do me a favor and hit that like button right now. It helps more than you know, and it tells me to keep bringing you stories like this one." The car took her south and east into the industrial heart of the Waterfront district, to a building that looked from the outside like a repurposed shipping warehouse, but on the inside had the cool, intentional design of a place built for serious work. Concrete floors, high ceilings, cameras at every corner, men who moved through the space with the efficiency of people who had been specifically selected for it. A man met her at the elevator. He introduced himself as Victor Shade, Roman's consigliere, his longtime advisor, the man who sat at his right hand through every decision that mattered. He was in his early 60s, trim and deliberate, wearing a charcoal cardigan over a collared shirt. He looked like a retired literature professor. He had the eyes of someone who had been making difficult calculations for a very long time and had never once flinched from the results. He took her to the top floor. Roman Cross was standing at the floor-to-ceiling window that overlooked the harbor. He had changed. Dark jeans, a black cashmere sweater, no jacket. He looked different without the armor of the suit. Not smaller, just more real. He had his hands in his pockets, and he was watching the water with the expression of a man who has been staring at the same problem from the same angle for so long that he has stopped seeing it and started simply enduring it. He did not turn around when she walked in. "You paid 3 months forward at Sunrise Recovery," he said, "before you called." "Yes, smart. You secured your brother before making any agreement with me. I did not know if I was going to make an agreement with you. And now?" She stood in the center of the room and looked at his back. "Now I am listening." He turned then. He crossed the room and sat at the edge of his desk, not behind it, which she noted, not putting the barrier between them. "I fired you from Valentis because the Sokov people saw your face. If you went back there, they would take you to find out what you know about me." He paused. "You know nothing about me, but they would not believe that until they had made very sure." He let that sit for a moment. "I have a property on Long Island, a house. It is not functioning correctly. The people managing it are incompetent or disloyal, and in several cases both. I need someone who notices details, who does not panic, who will tell me directly when something is wrong without waiting to see whether I want to hear it. You want me to run your house. I want you to run my life outside this building, the estate, the staff, the kitchen, the schedule. You would live on the property. Your brother's treatment is fully covered as part of your employment. $13,000 a month. The number landed in the room between them, and she felt the weight of it the way you feel the weight of something you have been needing for so long, that when it finally appears you do not immediately trust it. "And if I say no?" He did not look away. I made 3 calls tonight after I left the restaurant. The restaurant industry in this city is smaller than people think, and the people I called have long memories. I am telling you this not to threaten you, but because I think you deserve to know the full shape of the choice you are making. It was the honesty of it that got her, not the threat. She had expected the threat, but he was not pretending the threat was something else. He was laying it out flat for her to see. This is what I have done. This is what I am. Here are your options as they actually exist. She looked at him for a long time. I want every Sunday, she said finally. Non-negotiable. Every Sunday I go to Westchester. Done. And if I find that your staff is stealing from you, I replace them. My call. Agreed. And I want it in writing. Marcus's treatment. Fully covered. Not contingent on my continued employment if you decide to end this. Something moved through his face. Respect, she would think later. Pure, uncomplicated respect. Victor will draw up the agreement tonight, he said. He extended his hand. Welcome to the most complicated employment arrangement in the state of New York, Miss Banks. She shook it. His grip was firm and warm, and it lasted exactly as long as it needed to, and no longer. My name is Deja, she said. I know, he said. I know everything about you. That is, I am afraid, simply a condition of how I operate. He paused. You can call me Roman. Cross Manor sat on 40 acres of private land on the north shore of Long Island, and it looked, at night, like something from a story that did not end happily. Stone walls, iron gates, security lights that caught the gravel drive in silver. The main house was 3 stories of gray stone with dark windows and a front door that could have belonged to a cathedral. Victor walked her through it the night she arrived, still in her server's uniform, her blood dried now and faint on her collar, carrying 2 suitcases that contained essentially everything she owned. Her 1-room apartment in Queens she had given up that same night. She had called her landlord from the car. The math was not complicated. The house was immaculate on the surface, but Deja had worked in enough high-end environments to see beneath the surface. The cleaning had been done for appearance, not for function. Surfaces wiped but corners ignored. The kind of cleaning performed by people who know they will not be inspected closely. The kitchen was stocked with luxury ingredients, half of which were expired, and the wine cellar had bottles labeled with dates that did not match the cases they were stored in. Someone had been replacing good bottles with cheap ones and billing Roman for the good ones. She noted it. She did not say anything yet. She was still learning the shape of the house. Victor showed her to her suite, East Wing, 2nd floor. The room was larger than her entire Queens apartment, with tall windows overlooking a garden that was still holding its winter structure, the bare bones of something that would be beautiful in spring. There was a vanity with silk flowers that no one had moved in a long time. The bedding was high and cool and clean in the way of rooms that have not been used for a while. This was his mother's room, Victor said in the doorway. He has not permitted anyone to stay here since she passed. Deja stood in the center of the room and looked around. Why here? Victor considered this for a moment with the air of someone deciding how much of an answer to give. I think, he said carefully, that he wanted someone in a room that meant something, rather than a staff room that meant nothing. He paused. Sleep well, Miss Banks. There is a great deal of work. There was a great deal of work. The first week she fired the cleaning company, she caught one of the crew photographing correspondence on Roman's study desk through a window, using a phone tucked against a clipboard. She did not confront them. She simply pulled their contract, called Victor, and had a new crew vetted and operational within 48 hours. She went through the wine cellar with an inventory list and documented every discrepancy. She replaced the kitchen stock entirely. She identified the source of a water leak in the east corridor that had been quietly warping the floor for months. She found a listening device, small, professional grade, behind a smoke detector in the study. She brought it to Roman in a small evidence bag. He looked at it for a moment, then he looked at her. How did you find it? I cleaned behind the smoke detector. None of the previous staff had. He set it on his desk. Good catch. Check everything. I will need access to your bedroom. Victor will accompany you." "That is fine." She found 2 more devices. She documented them all and gave Roman a written report with hand-drawn diagrams of where each had been located. He read the report twice. She knew because she could hear him in his study, the particular quality of the silence of a room where someone is reading something that requires attention. She barely saw him in those first days. He left before 6 in the morning and came back after midnight. And when he did come back, he went directly to his study and the light stayed on until the early hours. He was a machine with a beautiful house, and the machine was slowly destroying itself. It was a Friday, 3 weeks into her tenure at the estate, when the first real thing happened between them. Deja woke at 3 in the morning with the particular alertness of someone whose sleep had been interrupted not by a sound, but by the absence of one. The house had a quality of stillness that felt occupied in a different way than usual. She pulled on a robe and went downstairs. The kitchen was dark except for the blue light of the refrigerator. Roman Cross was sitting at the island with a glass of whiskey in front of him and his head in his hands. He was still in his clothes from the day. His jacket was on the floor at the foot of the bar stool. His shirt was unbuttoned to the middle, and there was a dark, spreading stain on the left sleeve that she recognized without wanting to. He heard her. His hand moved to his side before he was even fully upright, and then he saw who it was, and his body settled, but the tension did not leave his shoulders. It just changed quality. "Go back to bed," he said. "You are bleeding. It is a graze. Go back to bed. Let me see." His voice had the flatness of a man who is not accustomed to being told no and is also, tonight, very tired. "I appreciate your diligence. Go to bed." She went to the sink. She dampened a clean cloth. She went to the cabinet beneath the counter, 3rd shelf, left side, where she had reorganized the first aid kit in her 2nd week because the previous location made no sense. She walked to the island and she pushed the whiskey glass aside with the back of her hand, and she looked at him. "Shirt," she said. A long moment. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, wind moved through the hedges. Roman Cross took off his shirt. She had seen violence in clinical settings. 2 years of nursing school had given her a framework for the kinds of things the human body can survive and the marks those things leave behind. But what she saw now was not clinical. It was biographical. His torso was a map of a life that had been survived rather than lived. The long lateral scar below his ribs, the puckered circle on his left shoulder that was unmistakably a bullet entry, the burn marks on his forearm that were old and smooth and had been there since before he had been who he was now. She cleaned the graze on his upper arm. It was not deep. She sutured it with a field kit, 4 small stitches, even and tight. She taped a clean dressing over it. Her hands were steady throughout. When she finished, she set down the tape and looked at him. 2 years of nursing school, he said. "How did you know that?" "I know your full history, Deja. I told you. It is how I stayed alive long enough to meet you. You make that sound like it should reassure me. It should. It means you are safe here." He picked up the whiskey glass, looked at it, and set it back down without drinking. "Why did you stop?" "The nursing. Marcus had his first hospitalization when I was in my 2nd year. I took a leave of absence. The leave became permanent when the money ran out." She looked at her hands. "It was not a difficult choice. He is my brother." He said quietly without any particular introduction, "I had a daughter. She went still. With my wife, Anna. She was born 7 weeks early. She was very small. She lived for 6 days. He was looking at his hands. Anna did not survive the year that followed. She was not physically ill. She simply stopped being able to carry it. And one morning in January 2 years ago, she was not there anymore. The kitchen was very quiet. Deja did not say she was sorry. She did not say she could imagine how that felt, because she could not. She did not offer any of the scaffolding that people build around grief to give it a shape that can be survived in polite company. She simply stayed where she was, present. breathing, not leaving. It was a significant thing anyone had done for him in 2 years. "The room where you are sleeping," he said after a while. "Anna never used it, but my mother did. She was the last person who sat with me when something was wrong and did not need me to explain it. She understood then why he had put her in that room." "Thank you for telling me," she said. He nodded once. He picked up his shirt from the counter. He looked at the whiskey glass again and left it where it was and stood. "Get some sleep," he said. "The provisioner is coming at 7. I know. I scheduled it." He almost smiled. She was almost certain of it. In the weeks that followed, something in the house shifted. It was not dramatic. It was the kind of change that happens in increments too small to measure individually, but that you look back on and recognize as having been absolute. Roman stopped working until collapse, or rather, he stopped when she left coffee and a meal outside his study door at 11 each night, and there was something in that small, unbidden act of care that interrupted the momentum of his self-destruction. He began to eat dinner at the kitchen island, which was the first time anyone at the estate had used the kitchen for something other than professional food production in longer than Victor could remember. He asked for her opinion on things. She gave it without softening it, and he listened with the focused attention of someone who had been surrounded by people telling him what he wanted to hear for so long that a contrary voice had become, perversely, restful. She visited Marcus every Sunday. He was improving in ways that were becoming visible, the color returning to his face, the focus coming back to his eyes, the first real conversations they had managed in 3 years. He asked about the new job and she said it was complicated, and he said, complicated good or complicated bad. And she thought about it seriously and said, I do not know yet. Both. He laughed. She had not heard him laugh in so long that it caught her off guard, and she had to look out the window for a moment. Victor watched all of it. Victor worried about all of it. He said as much to her directly one morning, standing in the kitchen doorway while she was reviewing the weekly staff schedule. He is not a man who forms attachments easily, Victor said, or safely. I am aware of that. Are you aware of what it costs him when an attachment is severed? Victor, I am his estate manager. I am managing his house. Victor looked at her for a long moment. His expression was not unkind. It was the expression of a man who has seen a great many things arrive and understood from the first moment what they were going to become. Of course, he said. Forgive me. He was not wrong to worry. On a Sunday in late March, Deja came out of sunrise recovery after visiting Marcus to find a woman waiting beside the black SUV that had come to collect her. The woman was in her mid-40s, lean and composed, with the particular stillness of someone trained to wait without fidgeting. She wore a dark coat and held a thin briefcase at her side. Miss Banks. She did not reach out to shake hands. Detective Lorraine Hayes, I have been working on a federal investigation for 7 years. I know who you are living with. I know what he is. And I know that you are a good person in a difficult situation. And I would like to talk to you. She did not get into the car. She stood on the sidewalk and she listened. Detective Hayes was thorough. She had documents, photographs, financial records, shipping manifests, a chain of evidence that stretched back through years of patient, meticulous work. She laid it out calmly and without drama, the way a doctor describes a diagnosis. Here is what exists. Here is what it means. Here is what you can do. And then she turned to a page near the back of the folder, and Deja looked at a name she recognized. Terrell Adolphus Banks, her mother's nephew, Ergosin. 23 years old when he had gone to work at the Cross Waterfront docks 5 years ago, referred by a friend who said the money was good and the work was steady, who had come home for 3 weeks and then one Tuesday had gone to work and not come back, whose case the police had ruled inconclusive, whose mother, Deja's Aunt Roseanne, still kept his bedroom in Baltimore exactly as he had left it. She sat with the folder in her hands on the sidewalk outside the recovery center for a long time. Then she went back inside and sat with Marcus for another hour, and she held it all. Roman, the house, the months of slow and complicated trust, and Terrell's name on a federal document, and she held it and did not let it resolve into anything yet, because she knew, with the instinct she had always had for the difference between a hasty decision and a right one, that this required more information than she currently possessed. She went back to the estate that night, and she walked into Roman's study, and she put the folder on his desk, and she looked at him. "I was approached today," she said, "by federal investigators. This is a copy of part of what they showed me. I made it when Detective Hayes was not looking." He looked at the folder. He did not open it immediately. "I know about the investigation," he said. "Open it," she said. "To the last page." He did. She watched his face. She had become, over the last months, very good at reading the things that moved through Roman Cross's face in the small fractions of a second before he controlled them. What moved through it now was not guilt. It was not evasion. It was something that looked, in that brief, unguarded moment, like genuine pain. "Terrell Banks," she said. He set the folder down. He was quiet for a long moment, and the quality of his quiet was different from his usual silences. This one was carrying something. "He worked my docks for 3 weeks, Roman said. "The Sokov family had been moving their people onto our operations for months, dock workers who would create disruptions at the right moments. Your cousin was not one of them. He was collateral." He paused. "The Sokovs killed him to send a message about what happened to people who worked for me. I found out 8 days later. I handled the men responsible." "Handled," she said. "They are not a concern anymore. That is not justice, Roman." "No," he said, with a steadiness that was somehow worse than defensiveness. "It is not. Justice would have involved a process that also would have exposed 10 people on that dock to federal prosecution, including 3 men who have never done anything wrong in their lives and happened to work for me. What I did was not justice. It was the only thing available to me that protected the people I was responsible for." She looked at him, at his face, which was open in a way she had not seen before, open and undefended, not asking for anything, not explaining himself beyond the plain facts. "I need to know," she said, "if you are telling me the truth." He held her gaze without flinching. "I am telling you the truth." She believed him. She had not decided to believe him. She simply found, taking honest inventory of everything she had learned in the months she had been in this house, every small thing, every 3 a.m. moment, every quiet act that revealed a man who was not entirely what his reputation required him to be, she found that she believed him. That did not resolve the rest of it. She did not sleep that night. She sat in the garden, in the cold, in the structure of the bare winter hedges, and she thought about Detective Hayes and her 7 years of evidence and the federal case she was building and what Deja Banks had that she wanted. And she thought about Marcus and the months that had been paid for. And she thought about Terrell and what real accountability for his death would actually look like, and whether sending Roman Cross to a federal facility accomplished that or simply closed a folder. And she thought about the Sokov brothers, who had killed her cousin, who had shot up a restaurant and tried to kill Roman, who were actively running operations through the Waterfront right now, this week, moving money through port infrastructure that affected a great many people who were not Roman Cross. By morning, she had made a decision, not a comfortable one, not one she could explain simply or defend completely, but an honest one. She went to Detective Hayes. She met her at a diner in Midtown, a neutral space, over coffee neither of them touched. She pulled a single document from her bag, a copy of a shipping manifest with names, dates, and coordinates that traced the Sokov port operation, the money laundering chain through 3 shell companies, and the location of a warehouse in Newark where the next major transaction was scheduled. "This is what you need," Deja said, "for the Sokovs. This is everything that gets them." Hayes looked at the document. Her face was professional and careful. "This is very helpful, Miss Banks. Now about the cross, this is everything I have," Deja said, "and it is the last thing I will ever give you." Hayes looked at her for a long moment. "You understand what you are protecting." "I understand what I am not going to destroy," Deja said. Terrell deserved real justice. He did not get it. Feeding you Roman Cross does not give his family something real. It gives them a headline and a closed case number. That is not the same thing. She stood. Take the Sokovs. That is real. That is something. She walked out of the diner and called Victor. She told him about the Sokov shipment, the Newark warehouse, the Tuesday night timeline. The Don needs to know that the federal investigation has this information, she said. He needs to decide what to do about his own exposure. I am not making that decision for him. But the Sokov's operation will be intercepted on Tuesday. Victor was quiet for a moment. You understand what you have just done, he said. I have protected what needed protecting and handed over what deserved to be taken, she said. That is all I have done. That is considerably more than you were hired to do. I know. On Tuesday night, a federal operation intercepted the Sokov delivery at the Newark port. Dmitry Sokov was arrested on the dock with enough evidence to put him away for 15 years minimum. His brother Vail was apprehended 2 hours later at a private airfield in New Jersey, his travel documents already prepared for a destination that suggested he had known this day was coming. The shell companies collapsed in sequence over the following 48 hours, and the names associated with them began appearing in federal filings that would keep prosecutors occupied for years. The Cross Syndicate was not touched. Roman watched the news on the screen in his study with Victor standing beside him. Neither of them spoke for a long time. She did this, Roman said finally. She found a path between turning on you and protecting people who deserved protecting, Victor said. I have worked for your family for 31 years, Don Roman. I have worked with a great many intelligent people. I have not in that time seen someone navigate this particular kind of impossible choice with this particular kind of precision. Roman looked at the screen, then he turned it off. He went downstairs. She was in the kitchen. It was early morning. She had been up since before dawn. She always was on the days when she had a great deal to think about. She was standing at the counter with a mug of coffee and looking out the window at the garden, which was beginning, very tentatively, to show the first green of early spring. She heard him come in. She did not turn around. He went to the coffee maker. He poured a cup. Badly, he made terrible coffee. She had told him this twice, and set it on the island and sat down. You did not turn over what Hayes wanted, he said. No. Why? She was quiet for a moment. She turned from the window and looked at him. At this man who was, she understood now, genuinely difficult to categorize, genuinely not reducible to a villain or a hero or any other shape that would make him easier to hold. Because Terrell deserved something real, and sending you to federal prison does not give his family something real. It gives them a headline and a closed case number. That is not the same thing. She wrapped both hands around her mug. And because I have been in this house for months, and I have watched you, and I do not believe that the sum of a person is their worst act or their most dangerous association. I believe the sum of a person is the accumulation of choices over time, including the choice of what to protect when protecting it costs something. He looked at her for a long time. I want to fund the rest of your nursing degree, he said, not as employment, as a separate thing, entirely your own. Your terms, your school, your schedule. It has nothing to do with this house or this situation. You do not owe me that. I am aware of that. He paused. I want to. She looked out the window at the garden. A bird landed on the edge of the stone wall and sat there for a moment and then was gone. I will think about it, she said. He nodded. He picked up his terrible coffee and looked at it. The Brunello, he said, from that first night. Was it actually better? By a significant margin. You knew it immediately. I know wine. I know a lot of things people assume I do not know. Yes, he said. I have come to understand that. They sat in the early morning kitchen with the light coming through the window at an angle that made the garden outside look like something from a painting, tentative and new and full of a potential that had not yet declared itself. The coffee was bad. The silence was not. Outside, spring was making its slow, stubborn argument against a long winter. Inside, two people who had each survived too much in isolation were beginning, carefully, imperfectly, without any roadmap, to stop surviving alone. Deja Banks had walked into Valenti's Waterfront 8 months ago, looking for enough money to close the gap between what she had and what Marcus needed. She had found something she did not have a name for yet, something that had come sideways, through shattered glass and gunsmoke and 3 a.m. silences, and the particular weight of a choice made in full knowledge of its cost. She had pushed a man out of the way of a bullet, not out of courage, but out of instinct. And the instinct, it turned out, had known something the calculation did not, that the thing worth pushing toward is not always the thing that looks safe. Sometimes it is the thing that looks complicated and heavy and real. Sometimes the most dangerous place to stand is right where you are. Before I let you go, drop a comment right now and tell me, do you think Deja made the right call? Would you have believed him about Terrell? Would you have walked away or stayed? I read every single comment on this channel, and I want to know what you think. If this story moved you, share it. Send it to someone who needs a story tonight. And if you have not subscribed yet, do it now. There are more stories where this came from, and I promise you, not one of them will let you down. Thank you for staying until the end. That means everything.